The silence of my new apartment was a lie. It was a deceptive calm, a thin veneer over the constant, intrusive symphony of my elderly neighbor, Mr. Abernathy, next door. I'd moved into this pre-war building with the usual optimistic naivete of someone seeking a fresh start in a new city. The rent was decent, the location prime, but the listing failed to mention that the walls were seemingly constructed from tracing paper. For the first few weeks, it was just background noise. The rhythmic creak of his rocking chair, the low murmur of a television set tuned to some classic film channel, the occasional raspy cough that always made me wince. I learned his schedule, his habits. He was an early riser, a late sleeper, and he seemed to subsist entirely on microwaved meals and daytime dramas. It was annoying, sure, but manageable. I'd tried earplugs, white noise machines, anything to create a barrier that the architect had so carelessly omitted. Nothing truly worked. Every sigh, every shuffle, every clink of a spoon against ceramic was amplified, a constant, unwanted companion. Then came the voices. It started subtly, a faint, high-pitched giggle filtering through the plaster. At first, I dismissed it as the TV, or perhaps a visiting grandchild, but the giggles turned into snippets of conversation, and soon full-blown dialogues. Mr. Abernathy was talking to someone, and he sounded happy, genuinely, profoundly happy. "Oh, you always were a scamp, weren't you, my dear?" I'd hear his voice, softer, more melodic than his usual gruff tones. "Remember that time you hid my spectacles in the sugar bowl? Nearly put sugar in my tea for a week." A pause, then a distinct, light, almost ethereal laugh, followed by Mr. Abernathy's chuckle. "Yes, yes, I know. You were only 5, but you had a mischievous streak even then." It became a daily occurrence. Mornings, afternoons, evenings. He'd talk about his day, the weather, old memories. He'd reminisce about childhood pranks, school dances, the time they went fishing and he caught nothing but a cold. He'd ask questions, and then, after a brief silence, he'd respond as if the other person had just finished speaking. "You want to hear about the trip to the Grand Canyon again? Oh, you loved that, didn't you? The way the light hit the rocks at sunset, like God himself was painting the sky." The conversations were always one-sided from my perspective, yet utterly complete in Mr. Abernathy's mind. He'd pause, nod, sometimes even sigh contentedly, clearly reacting to something I couldn't hear. And the person he was talking to, he always called her my daughter. It was sweet in a way. An old man, perhaps lonely, finding comfort in imaginary conversations with a beloved child. I pictured a grown woman, maybe living far away, unable to visit often. He missed her, and this was his way of coping. I felt a pang of sympathy, the thin walls now offering a window into a quiet, gentle sadness. My landlord, Mrs. Albright, was a stout woman with a no-nonsense demeanor and a surprisingly kind smile. A few weeks after the conversations began, I ran into her in the hallway, carrying a heavy bag of groceries. I offered to help, and as we walked, I casually mentioned Mr. Abernathy. "He seems like a lovely old man," I said, hoisting a bag higher. "I hear him talking to his daughter sometimes. She must visit often." Mrs. Albright stopped dead, her hand tightening on the strap of her own bag. Her smile vanished, replaced by a look that was a peculiar mix of pity and something else, something I couldn't quite place, but felt cold. "His daughter?" she repeated, her voice hushed. "Mr. Abernathy, he hasn't had a daughter visit him in 20 years, dear." My brow furrowed. "Oh, I just meant I hear him talking to her, loudly, almost every day." Her gaze drifted towards Mr. Abernathy's door, a shadow passing over her face. "His only daughter, Sarah, died in that apartment 20 years ago this coming October. A sudden illness. He never truly recovered. He's been alone ever since." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, like a damp shroud. My blood ran cold. 20 years, alone, his only daughter, died in that very apartment. The kind, gentle sadness I'd felt moments before curdled into a creeping dread. The conversations I'd been hearing weren't a lonely old man coping. They were something else entirely. I thanked Mrs. Albright, mumbled an excuse about forgetting something, and practically ran back to my apartment. I locked the door, leaning against it, my heart hammering against my ribs. The thin walls, once merely an inconvenience, now felt like a curse. They weren't just letting sound in, they were forcing me to be an unwilling participant in something profoundly unnatural. That night, sleep was impossible. Every rustle from next door, every creak of the floorboards sent a jolt of ice through me. I lay there, rigid, listening, and then I heard it. "Did you like the new curtains, Sarah?" I picked out the blue ones, just like you always said you wanted for your room. Mr. Abernathy's voice, clear and distinct. A pause, then a faint whisper, so soft it might have been the wind, yet undeniably there, right on the other side of my wall. "They're beautiful, Daddy." My breath hitched. It wasn't a giggle this time. It wasn't a snippet of a laugh. It was a voice. A young, sweet, feminine voice. And it was right there. I scrambled out of bed, grabbing my phone, my fingers fumbling. I wanted to call someone, anyone. But what would I say? "My neighbor is talking to his dead daughter, and I think I just heard her reply." I'd sound insane. I spent the rest of the night huddled on my sofa, a blanket pulled tight around me, staring at the wall that separated me from whatever was happening next door. The conversations continued, interspersed with long silences, then Mr. Abernathy's contented sighs. I heard him read to her, a soft, soothing cadence. I heard him hum a lullaby. The next morning, I tried to rationalize. Maybe Mrs. Albright was mistaken. Maybe Mr. Abernathy had another daughter. Maybe I was overtired, stressed, and my mind was playing tricks on me, filling in the blanks. But the landlord's face, her tone, the way she'd looked at the door, it was too real. I started doing my own research. I found old newspaper archives online. Sarah Abernathy died suddenly, age 24. Pneumonia, complicated by an underlying condition. The address matched. The date matched. There was even a small, blurry photo of her, a bright-eyed young woman with a kind smile. The conversations continued, growing more detailed, more intimate. Mr. Abernathy would describe things that only someone living in his apartment would notice. "Oh, Sarah, look, that little spider is back in the corner of your ceiling. Remember how you used to name them? What was this one's name again? Bartholomew?" I knew there was a spider in my corner of the ceiling. I'd seen it the day before, a tiny gray thing, spinning a delicate web. My blood ran cold again. The apartments were mirror images. His daughter's room was directly opposite mine. The lines between the two apartments, between the living and the dead, were blurring. The thin walls were not just permeable to sound, they felt permeable to presence. I started feeling watched, not just from next door, but from everywhere within my own apartment. Shadows seemed to deepen, corners seemed to hold more than just dust. Sometimes I'd catch a fleeting movement in my peripheral vision, a wisp of white, a sudden darkening, gone before I could fully turn my head. One evening, as Mr. Abernathy was recounting a story about Sarah's first day of school, I heard a distinct thud against my wall. It wasn't a loud bang, but a soft, rhythmic tap, 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 like someone was gently knocking. I froze. Mr. Abernathy's voice continued, oblivious. The tapping came again, closer this time, as if moving along the wall. Tap, tap, tap. It seemed to travel from the corner of the room, across my bed towards my headboard. I pulled the covers over my head, trembling. I knew it wasn't Mr. Abernathy. He was still talking, his voice steady. This was something else, something in my room. The tapping stopped at my headboard. Then, a faint scratching sound, like fingernails dragging lightly across plaster. It was directly behind my head. I couldn't breathe. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing I could disappear. A whisper closer than before, chillingly clear, seemed to seep through the very fabric of the wall. "Who are you?" My heart seized. It was the same voice I'd heard before, Sarah's voice, and it was angry. I shot out of bed, stumbling backwards, my eyes wide with terror. I stared at the wall, at the spot where my head had been. Nothing was there. But the air in the room was suddenly heavy, cold, and charged with an unseen presence. The conversations next door continued, but now they had a sinister undertone. Mr. Abernathy's voice still sounded happy, but I started to pick up on nuances I hadn't noticed before. He was talking about my apartment. "Oh, she's new, dear. Just moved in. A bit quiet, I think. But she keeps to herself. You don't mind, do you?" A pause, then a low, guttural sound that wasn't a whisper, but more like a sigh of irritation. I couldn't make out words, but the feeling of it was palpable, a possessive, territorial anger. I knew then. Sarah wasn't just visiting. She was there. She had never left, and she was aware of me. I started spending less and less time in my apartment. I'd leave early for work, stay late, go to the library, sit in coffee shops, anything to avoid the oppressive presence that now permeated my home. But even when I was out, the dread clung to me. I felt like I was being watched, followed. The thought of returning to that apartment, to those thin walls, made my stomach clench. One night, after a particularly long shift, I dragged myself back, exhausted but still on edge. As I unlocked my door, I heard Mr. Abernathy's voice, louder than usual, almost agitated. "No, Sarah, don't be like that. She's just trying to live her life. There's enough room for everyone, isn't there?" A piercing shriek, not human, not animal, but something raw and furious, ripped through the wall. It was followed by the sound of glass shattering, furniture crashing, and Mr. Abernathy's terrified cry, "Sarah, no! Stop it! You'll hurt yourself!" My blood ran cold. This wasn't a gentle spirit. This was something violent, something enraged. I hesitated for only a second. My first instinct was to run, to flee this cursed place. But something held me. Mr. Abernathy was in danger. I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911, my fingers shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "My neighbor," I gasped. I think someone's attacking him. They're screaming and crashing apartment 3B. As I waited for the police, I pressed my ear to the wall, listening to the cacophony next door. The crashing continued, punctuated by Mr. Abernathy's increasingly desperate pleas. Then, a chilling sound, a low, keening wail that seemed to vibrate through my very bones. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated grief and rage, and it was coming from Sarah. Suddenly the noise stopped. Utter silence, the kind of silence that screams louder than any sound. I waited, heart pounding, listening for any sign of life. Nothing, just the oppressive stillness. Minutes later, I heard sirens wailing in the distance, growing louder. Footsteps thundered up the stairs, and a rapid knocking on Mr. Abernathy's door. "Police, open up." Silence. More knocking, louder, more insistent. Then, the sound of a lock being forced. I pressed my ear to the wall again, straining to hear. I heard the muffled voices of the police, their footsteps inside the apartment. A gasp, a low, horrified murmur. Then one of the officers spoke, his voice grim. "Clear. No one here, but call forensics and get a coroner out here. Looks like a heart attack. But look at this place." Another officer, his voice tight with discomfort, added, "And what's with all the broken glass and the claw marks on the walls? It's like something tore through this place." My breath hitched. Claw marks. I pulled away from the wall, my hand instinctively going to my own throat. Mr. Abernathy was dead, and Sarah, she was still there. The police investigated for hours. They interviewed me, but I kept my mouth shut about the voices, about Sarah. What could I say? They'd think I was crazy. They concluded it was a heart attack, exacerbated by the chaotic state of the apartment. Perhaps he'd had a struggle or fallen. They couldn't explain the damage, the claw marks, the sense of utter devastation in the room. They just chalked it up to an elderly man's final, desperate moments. But I knew. I packed my bags that very night. I didn't care about the lease, about the deposit. I just needed to get out. As I dragged my last suitcase towards the door, I heard it again. A faint whisper, like a sigh of contentment, coming from the apartment next door. Finally, alone. I didn't look back. I didn't even close the apartment door. I just ran, leaving everything behind, the thin walls and the spectral daughter of Mr. Abernathy, now a permanent chilling fixture in my memory. I often wonder who moved into that apartment after me. I wonder if the new tenant hears the whispers too, or if Sarah, finally having her father all to herself, has decided to be a little less subtle with her next unwelcome guest. And sometimes, late at night, in the relative safety of my new, much thicker walled apartment, I swear I can still hear a faint, almost imperceptible scratching sound just on the other side of my bedroom wall.
Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.